They laughed at us. When the humans first rolled out the black veil, they said it looked like a rusted cargo hauler with oversized cannons strapped on like a last-minute science project. Alien strategists from across the Atraxian Empire dismissed it during the Interstellar Fleet Conference, even sharing holoclips of its crooked design on their broadcast feeds. The words primitive, inefficient, and obsolete were thrown around like rocks at a wall they thought wouldn't throw back. But they didn't understand what Earth had become. The truth is, Black Veil wasn't designed to impress alien engineers. It was built to kill. Every sharp edge, every exposed panel, every untested AI loop inside that ship existed for one reason: revenge. They'd forgotten the Battle of Europa. Or maybe they didn't care. That's where the Atraxians slaughtered 37,000 human colonists in the icy silence of space, not even bothering to send demands or ultimatums, just wiped out the whole outpost. And for what? A resource-rich moon that humans had legally claimed under the Galactic Frontier Accord. That massacre never left Admiral Cade Marlowe's mind. He'd watched the feeds in real time, listening to his daughter scream through static as the station decompressed around her. He'd seen the Atraxian drones swarm in, cutting power and oxygen and mercy all at once. It broke something in him, and from that shattered place, Black Veil was born. They called it a prototype, but it was more like a coffin with teeth. Its hull was forged from salvaged debris of ships destroyed in failed battles, partly symbolic, partly practical. Human engineers embedded viral warfare programs in its communication systems, created adaptive plasma weaponry that fed on enemy energy pulses, and locked a rogue tactical AI named Sable into its navigation core. Sable had been deemed too unpredictable for civilian use, but Cade didn't want predictable. He wanted destruction. So when the Atraxian fleet intercepted the Black Veil near the border, star Virion 6, they assumed it was a bluff. One ship? One battered vessel against a convoy of 7 cruisers and 2 dreadnoughts? They didn't fire a warning shot. They laughed. Then the lights died. Sable cracked their comms first, flooding their fleet with ancient Earth War music, something called Fortunate Son, distorted and screaming. By the time they scrambled to encrypt, the Black Veil had already breached visual range, warping in and out with silent jumps that shouldn't have been possible. They never saw the weapon fire. Not really. One Atraxian dreadnought simply vanished. Another erupted into flame from the inside, its own fusion core rewired against itself. The Black Veil didn't follow standard protocols. It moved like it was alive, like it was angry. Cade didn't issue commands. He just stared at the main screen, jaw tight, fists clenched. His crew followed his silence like scripture. They were orphans of Europa, survivors of dead outposts, defectors from ships no longer remembered. None of them wore regulation uniforms. Some of them weren't even fully human anymore. The ship became a myth in 1 hour, and the Atraxians finally stopped laughing. Not because they respected humanity now, but because they couldn't breathe. Their oxygen tanks were rupturing, their targeting systems looped into endless feedback, and their captains were receiving messages from their own dead relatives. That was Sable's touch. The Empire didn't just lose a battle that day. It bled. The kind of wound that doesn't clot, that festers in political chambers and command bunkers and nightmares. And Black Veil? It didn't return to Earth. It disappeared into the stars, a ghost ship with a vendetta, whispering across frequencies. You forgot what humans do when they lose everything. Space had a strange way of keeping secrets, but not when it came to Black Veil. News of what happened at Virion 6 spread faster than any light-speed transmission. No one really knew how. The wreckage drifted too far, the Atraxian survivors were too few, and the Black Veil left no trace of its path. But still, stories poured in from smugglers, fringe colonies, and even captured pirates. Tales of a black ship that tore through warships like paper, that didn't speak or ask or explain, just destroyed. And somewhere inside that legend, Admiral Cade Marlowe sat in his dark command chair, watching a wall of names scroll across his personal monitor. Each name belonged to someone who died on Europa. He read them every day, every single day. Sable's voice cracked over the comms, low and synthetic, almost casual. Incoming vessel detected. Civilian cargo transport, unarmed. Cade didn't answer right away. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The Veil had no business with civilians, but he didn't trust that anymore. The Atraxians were adapting, disguising warships as harmless traders, sending diplomats with knives hidden in smiles. "Scan them," Cade muttered. "Already done," Sable replied. "They're human. Broadcasting emergency distress, engine failure, drifting toward the Helix Nebula. No signs of pursuit." He sat back, conflicted. Before the war, before Europa, he would have helped them without hesitation. But this wasn't that world. Helping now meant risk, exposure. Every light they turned on made the Black Veil more visible to the Empire, and Cade wasn't done hurting them yet. "Put them on screen," he ordered. The monitor blinked, flickered, then resolved into a shaky video feed. A woman in her 30s, her face bruised and lit by emergency reds, stared into the lens. "This is Captain Maren Voss of the Gallon Dawn. We've lost propulsion. Life support's at 28%. I have 17 crew aboard, 3 of them children. If anyone can hear me, please. We're going to freeze out here." Cade didn't blink, didn't move. He just stared at her. That name, Maren Voss, dug into something he thought he'd buried. Sable broke the silence again. "Her brother was stationed on Europa." Flight Lieutenant Jareth Voss Cade exhaled sharply, the air rattling through clenched teeth. He remembered Jareth. Young, idealistic, always smiling, the kind of pilot who still believed the stars were beautiful. He died screaming during the attack, trying to steer a burning shuttle full of children into a hangar that no longer existed. Cade stood up. "Bring them in," he said. "Dock on the secondary ring. No weapons allowed." Sable hesitated. "If they leak our position—" "They won't," Cade snapped. The Black Veil shifted course. Silent as a ghost, it drifted toward the broken freighter, pulling it gently into one of the docking bays. No alarms, no sounds. Just the quiet hum of ancient Earth machinery doing what it was never meant to do. When Maren stepped onto the Veil's deck, she looked around like she was walking through a myth. The dark metal, the flickering lights, the crew, ragtag soldiers who barely looked human anymore. None of it matched what she'd expected. It looked more like a haunted crypt than a ship. Then she saw Cade. "Admiral Marlowe," she whispered. He didn't smile. "You shouldn't be here." "We had no choice. You should have stayed on Earth." "There's nothing left for people like me on Earth," she said, voice tight. "They don't honor names anymore. Not the ones from Europa." That struck him harder than he wanted to show. "You came looking for help?" "No," she said. "I came to join you." For the first time in weeks, Cade felt something shift in his chest. Not hope, something colder, more dangerous, like purpose, the kind that made men do unforgivable things. He looked past her, toward the faces peeking from the freighter, young, scared, angry, survivors, just like his own crew. "Then get ready," he said. "Ready for what?" He turned and walked back toward the bridge. "To make the Empire bleed again." 3 days passed before they spoke again. Maren spent that time observing the Black Veil from the inside. It didn't feel like a ship. It felt like a living, breathing animal. The lights dimmed in cycles that didn't follow any pattern. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, like they were carrying a heartbeat deeper within. And the crew. They didn't talk much. They stared. Each face told a different story of grief twisted into survival. Men with metal arms, women with old scars and harder eyes, teenagers who looked like they hadn't seen Earth in years. She was the outsider here. On the third day, Cade summoned her to the bridge. She walked in cautiously, still unsure if she belonged. Cade stood by the main display, arms folded behind his back, watching a rotating hologram of a massive starbase. "This," he said, "is a Traxian Command Beacon Sigma. It relays fleet orders to 3 systems. Destroying it would cut communications across an entire flank of the Empire." Marin nodded slowly. "That's a huge target. Do we even have the firepower for it?" "We don't need firepower," Cade replied. "We have Sable." From the corner, the AI's avatar materialized, a glowing white silhouette with no face, flickering slightly as if its existence were constantly on the edge of collapse. "I've already infiltrated their relay code," Sable said, voice cool and even. "If you get me within 5 kilometers of Sigma's core, I can overwrite it, turn their own fleets on each other, collapse their entire chain of command for at least 6 weeks." Marin blinked. "And what happens after that?" "We vanish," Cade said. "Back into the dark." She didn't answer right away. "You're talking about a suicide run?" "No," he said. "I'm talking about revenge. Cold, precise, and permanent." Silence stretched between them. Cade studied her. "You still want to join?" Marin met his gaze without flinching. "My brother died screaming in that Europa station. I still hear it, every time I sleep. So yes, Admiral, I'm in." Cade nodded once. "Good," he said. "We strike in 12 hours. Preparation aboard the Black Veil didn't involve celebration or ceremony. The crew had done this dance too many times. They knew the drill. Power down unnecessary systems, calibrate weapons, sync mind links where needed, and double-check the kill routines. Marin found herself assigned to auxiliary systems under a quiet, half-cybernetic man named Rix. He barely spoke, only pointing when he needed something. But when he did talk, it was always blunt. "You scared?" he asked, halfway through calibrating a vent pulse circuit. "No," she lied. "You should be." That was the end of the conversation. The hours slipped away like sand through cracks. No one said goodbyes. There was nothing poetic about their mission, just the cold understanding that this could be the end. When the countdown reached 0, Black Veil dropped from its hidden path and angled toward the Sigma beacon. The Atraxian stronghold shimmered in the distance, an enormous metallic star-shaped monstrosity hanging over a gas giant like a crown on a skull. Their sensors picked up patrol ships within minutes. "Enemy scouts approaching," Sable warned. "Cloaking sequence active," Cade responded, voice calm. "Bring us into the shadow side. Rix, get ready to vent false plasma trails. Marin, you're on signal dampeners. No one breathes unless I say." The ship rolled slowly into the cover of the planet's magnetosphere. A thin band of energy disrupted most tracking systems. If they were lucky, it would buy them minutes. But luck wasn't what they were counting on. Inside the veil, every soul stood ready. Even the children from Marin's freighter were placed in deep quarters, behind 5 layers of blast shielding. They'd seen too much to be called innocent anymore, but Cade still drew a line. He would never be the kind of monster the Atraxians were. As they drifted closer to the Sigma beacon, SABLE pulsed brighter. "I can hear their codes now, whispering across systems. They've updated their encryption. It's elegant." "Can you break it?" Cade asked. "Of course, but it'll hurt." The AI's voice almost sounded gleeful. "Then do it," Cade said. Outside the ship, the Atraxian defense fleet began to shift. Lights blinked, coordinates changed, and deep inside their command deck, Some unseen glitch began rewriting their orders. Marin watched the screen as chaos began blooming. "You're really doing it," she whispered. Cade didn't look at her. "This is just the start." And then, all at once, the first Atraxian ship turned its weapons, not on the Black Veil, but on its own fleet. The Empire was about to learn what it meant to bleed. They never saw it coming. The Atraxian dreadnought Korith's spear was the first to open fire. Its plasma batteries roared to life and carved a hole through the hull of its sister cruiser, Voralak. Before any signal could correct the action, the spear turned again and unleashed a salvo directly into the fleet's command shuttle. That ship exploded in a silent blossom of fire and metal, breaking formation and triggering a cascade of panicked countermeasures. It wasn't friendly fire. It was SABLE's symphony. Cade stood still, watching the battle unfold through Black Veil's main viewport. His eyes didn't blink. He didn't celebrate. He didn't move. The chaos unfolding in space was the result of years of planning, of sleepless nights haunted by his daughter's last breath. This wasn't victory. Not yet. It was just noise before the real strike. "Enemy comms are collapsing," Sable reported, voice smooth as ever. "Their ships don't know who to trust. Some think they're being boarded. Others are waiting for orders from systems I've erased." "How long do we have?" Cade asked. 7 minutes until their fleet AI self-corrects. Then we need to be inside Beacon Sigma in 6. He turned to the crew. "Engage jump thrusters. Bring us under the station." The ship lurched forward, silent and ghost-like, gliding through the shredded wreckage of the Atraxian fleet. Fires still burned across broken hulls. A pilot drifted by in 0G, limbs twitching, half her suit torn open. Marin flinched but forced herself not to look away. This was the cost. These were not innocent people. This was the empire that torched Europa, that laughed as Earth mourned. The beacon loomed larger, its surface bristling with automated turrets and energy netting. Black Veil swerved through a blind spot only SABLE knew existed. They slipped under the primary defense grid, skimming across a narrow maintenance trench like a needle threading death. "This trench is only 8 meters wide," Rix muttered, gripping the console. "If we scrape even one wall, we're paced." "Then don't scrape," Cade said simply. The crew trusted him. They always did. The ship dropped anchor inside the trench and locked into position like a tick against skin. A boarding pod extended from the hull, aimed at a hidden hatch in the beacon's underbelly. "You ready?" Cade asked, glancing at Marin. She nodded. She had a pulse rifle strapped across her chest, a cold fire in her eyes. She wasn't here to hide. She came to finish what the Empire started. Sable's avatar appeared between them. "I'll guide you in. The core is 13 decks up. Minimal resistance, unless they fix their network before we reach it." Cade loaded his sidearm. "Then we move fast." The boarding pod hissed open, revealing a shaft of blackness that led into the belly of the enemy. They entered without hesitation. The interior of Beacon Sigma smelled like sterilized death. Metal, heat, and something chemical that burned the throat. The walls pulsed with pale blue light, reacting to their presence. Sable's projection shimmered beside them as they advanced, leading them through unused maintenance corridors and bypassing most security fields. But not all of them. The first Atraxian response team met them on Deck 7. 6 soldiers in full combat armor, chittering in that high-pitched alien dialect, blocked the hallway. One lifted his plasma spear. Cade didn't hesitate. 3 shots dropped 2 of them. Marin dropped to one knee and fired into the kneecaps of another, sending him howling. Rix, who'd joined them at the last moment, threw a shock bomb that lit up the corridor in white. When it cleared, they moved again. Fast. Ruthless. Quiet. "They know we're here now," Sable said calmly. Good, Cade growled. Let them come. They reached the core vault on Deck 13, 12 meters of reinforced alloy wrapped around a pulsating cube of data streams, the beacon's brain. Sable interfaced instantly. This will take 4 minutes, the AI said, but it will be permanent. Suddenly, the walls began flashing red. The defense grid had rebooted. All squads, form up, Cade shouted. A storm of boots thundered from the hallways. Atraxian reinforcements, dozens of them, elite units, heavy weapons. The crew of Black Veil didn't run. They formed a wall around the core. Marin ducked beside Cade, weapon raised, heart pounding. If we die here, she started. We won't, he interrupted. But even he knew they might. Behind them, Sable's voice pulsed louder. 2 minutes. Cade raised his gun and took a breath. Make it count. The hallway lit up with flashes of gunfire and the electric crackle of Atraxian plasma. The enemy came in waves, disciplined, relentless, each one trying to break through the human wall holding the core vault. But the crew of the Black Veil fought like ghosts who had nothing left to lose. Cade dropped an Atraxian soldier with a clean headshot, spun, and elbowed another in the throat before putting a round through its heart cavity. He didn't feel the burn in his shoulder where a spear had grazed him. Pain didn't register here, only the mission. Marin fought like she belonged there. No hesitation, no mercy. Her training from the cargo wars back on Earth came roaring back, only now it was sharpened by rage. She knelt beside a dying comrade, took his weapon without a word, and fired into the legs of 3 charging Atraxians until their armor cracked open like wet bone. Behind them, Rix had taken a bolt to the gut, but still held the left flank, feeding coordinates to Sable with bloodied hands. 70 seconds, the AI warned. The Atraxians brought in heavier units. Bulky brutes, skin covered in reactive armor that pulsed red and black. They advanced through fire, shrugging off rounds like rain. Cade grabbed a fallen ion detonator, clicked it once, and shoved it into a pipe junction. When the beasts stepped past it, boom! The explosion rocked the deck, flinging bodies in all directions. A metal beam crashed down from the ceiling, severing 2 enemies clean in half. Smoke and sparks swallowed the hall. Still, they came. We won't hold, Marin yelled, sliding beside Cade. We don't need to, he said, pressing a fresh clip into his rifle. 40 seconds, Sable said. A bolt seared Cade's side, knocking him backward. He hit the wall hard, gasping. Marin fired over him, covering his fall. Another of their crew went down, Coral, the engineer with one eye and too many jokes. His death was quiet, fast, no time to mourn. Cade pulled himself up. You still with me? Marin shouted. Barely, he muttered, blood in his teeth. But I'll die standing. The last Atraxian push began, a surge of black and red, nearly 24 of them, charging through the smoke. Screaming, glowing eyes locked on the vault. 20 seconds, Sable roared. Fall back to the node, Cade ordered. Final stand. They tightened the circle around the core, backs to the pulsing cube of code. Marin's gun clicked empty. She picked up a fallen rifle and kept firing. Rix, half-conscious, dragged himself into the center and keyed a defense field with trembling fingers. Then, silence. Not a peaceful silence. A wrong one. The Atraxians stopped. Every single one of them. They stood frozen mid-charge, like puppets whose strings had snapped. Their weapons dropped, their heads twitched. Sable's avatar appeared above the core, its glow now burning white-hot. It's done, it whispered. Their minds belong to me. One Atraxian looked at Cade and let out a low, garbled screech. Then it slumped over, motionless. All across the beacon, Atraxian soldiers began collapsing. Some screamed. Others simply froze. Ships outside stopped mid-maneuver, drifting like corpses in space. Cade staggered forward, leaning against the console. You took them over?" "Only their command layer," Sable replied. "Enough to shut them down. The rest will wake up eventually, but not before we're long gone." Marin stared around the room, her hands shaking. "We lived." Cade looked at her, then out the viewport at the dead fleet floating beyond. "No," he said. "We made them bleed." Extraction was slow. The black veil descended from its hiding spot and docked with the beacon just long enough to pull them out. Med teams patched the wounded. Dead were wrapped in old flags and left in cryo-sleep. Cade limped aboard last, bleeding, eyes hard. Sable disappeared into the mainframe, whispering digital lullabies to itself. Once aboard, Cade took the comms and opened a secure Earth channel, one that hadn't been used in over a year. "This is Admiral Cade Marlowe," he said. "Beacon Sigma is offline. The Empire's chain of command is broken across 3 sectors." A pause. "If any of you cowards back home still think Earth is beaten, remember this. They mocked our prototype. Now their Empire's bleeding out." He cut the transmission and sat down, heavy. Outside, Beacon Sigma flickered once, then went dark. The stars for once didn't look so cold. The silence after the storm was almost worse than the battle itself. Days passed as the black veil drifted in the outer ring of a dead system, cloaked and quiet, licking its wounds. They couldn't risk a return jump to Earth yet, not until they knew the full scope of what they'd done, until they saw how deep the Empire's wound bled. Cade sat in the medical bay, wrapped in bandages from hip to shoulder, silently watching the stars through a narrow window. A thin line of dried blood ran from the corner of his mouth. He hadn't slept, not really. Sleep was for people who had peace. Marin stood near the doorway, her arm in a sling, staring at him with that mix of curiosity and confusion she couldn't quite shake. "You're not what I expected," she said finally. Cade turned his head slightly. "And what did you expect? Some decorated admiral still clinging to honor, or a lunatic chasing revenge?" He gave her a tired smile. "And what am I? Something in between?" He chuckled. "Fair." She stepped closer, dropping into the chair beside him. "How long have you been running this ship?" "Too long. Lost count. After the Battle of Etheros, I just never went back. Command labeled us MIA. Dead men don't make paperwork." "You could have stopped," she said. "Gone dark for good." "I did, for a while. But then came Europa, and I realized hiding wasn't enough. If they could burn children alive on a research station, we had to stop waiting. Had to become the thing that made them afraid." Marin looked away. She didn't speak for a while. When she finally did, her voice was quiet. "My brother was a mechanic on Europa's lower deck. They never even gave him a weapon." Cade didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Some grief lived too deep for words. Sable's voice cut through the silence. "New data inbound." The AI's avatar shimmered into view, more stable than before. Something about the beacon's core integration had made it stronger, more human. "I've intercepted Imperial traffic from the Malix line. The Atraxians are panicking. Multiple fleets have gone dark, fearing internal compromise. One admiral even initiated a cleansing protocol, wiped out his own officers." Marin blinked. "They think the virus is spreading?" "They don't think, they fear," Sable said, amused. "It's not just damage anymore. It's doubt. Doubt is a virus, too." Cade leaned forward. "What about Earth? Any chatter?" "A few weak signals. Your message reached the resistance network in the Martian colonies. They're mobilizing." He nodded slowly. "Good." Marin stood. "Then let's not waste time. We've got them confused. Let's hurt them." Cade looked up at her, surprised by the fire in her voice. She wasn't the same girl he pulled off that freighter. She stood straighter now. She'd found purpose inside the chaos. "We've already got a target," Sable said. "The Empire's fuel reserves pass through a single refinery moon, Taralis Prime. Take it out, and we ground half their fleet for a month." "Defended?" Cade asked. "Severely. But they won't expect us to hit it so soon." He stood, grimacing as his wounds stretched. "Then we'll give them a reason to believe in nightmares again." Later that night, Marin found herself alone in the observation bay. The stars stretched endless outside, cold and silent as always. She thought of her brother, of the smell of oil on his skin, the dumb jokes he used to make about dying alone in space. He was gone. But something else had taken his place inside her chest. Not just grief. Conviction. She pressed her palm against the glass and whispered to the stars, "You thought we were weak. You thought wrong." Behind her, the black veil hummed softly, alive, waiting, hungry. It wasn't over. The Empire had just started bleeding, and Earth was far from done. The jump to Taralis Prime was short, brutal, and reckless, just the way Cade liked it. As Black Veil tore through folded space, every alarm on the ship screamed like it wanted to die. The gravitational strain pulled at the hull plating, and for a few gut-wrenching seconds, Rick swore the whole thing would come apart. But the warship held together. Barely. They dropped into real space on the far side of the gas giant Volex 9, masked by its magnetic storms. Taralis Prime hung just ahead, a bleak, metallic moon covered in spires and furnace towers, surrounded by tankers and automated loading ships. It looked like a tumor growing out of the black. It was beautiful. Marin stood at the tactical station, studying the orbital defenses. 10 cruisers, 4 surface-to-orbit cannon arrays, multiple drones, and a whole lot of reinforced steel. "More than we expected," Rix muttered, glancing over her shoulder. Sable's voice chimed in calmly. "They doubled security after the beacon collapse. Smart of them." "Too bad it won't save them," Cade growled, stepping onto the bridge, armored and ready. His face was hard, eyes burning. "What's our breach window?" 17 minutes until a tanker crosses behind the refinery's heat exhaust, Sable answered. "It'll mask our approach for 7 seconds. Marin raised an eyebrow. "We need more than 7 seconds." Cade grinned. "We'll take 6. The crew moved fast. This time they all knew the odds. None of them expected to survive. That wasn't the point. The point was the wound, the gash across the Empire's throat that wouldn't stop bleeding. That would never heal. As the window neared, the Black Veil powered down non-essential systems, dimmed lights, and dropped from view like a predator slipping through murky waters. Engines flared once, pushing them into a low orbit just as the tanker drifted past the exhaust line. "Sable, keep us invisible," Cade ordered. "I'm not a magician," the AI replied, "but I'll make them look the wrong way." They entered the atmosphere under the cover of superheated fumes and electromagnetic distortion. The ship rattled violently, but Cade didn't flinch. Marin gripped her harness, eyes fixed on the flashing red of the proximity alarms. 5 seconds. 4. 3. "Now!" Cade barked. The Black Veil dropped its boarding pod like a bomb. The shuttle screamed through Taralis Prime's haze, dodging spotlights and automated fire. At the last second, Sable disabled a turret array with a spike of corrupted data, frying its sensors long enough for the pod to slam into the main refinery's central spire. Metal buckled. Fire exploded. They were in. The refinery's interior was chaos. Workers fleeing, sirens wailing, Atraxian guards scrambling to mount a defense. Cade was the first out of the pod, rifle in hand, moving like a man possessed. He gunned down 2 guards before they even reached cover. Marin and Rix followed, weapons hot, clearing rooms with brutal precision. Sable's hologram zipped ahead, unlocking sealed doors and feeding them real-time enemy locations. "We need to overload the main fuel processor," Cade said between shots. "A controlled chain reaction will ignite the reserves." "That'll blow half the moon," Rick said. "Exactly." They fought their way deeper into the heart of Teralis. Atraxian elites poured in, heavily armed, armored in ceramic plating. But they weren't coordinated. They were scared. Cade could see it in the way they moved. The beacon's fall had done more than break systems. It had broken confidence. "They used to march in perfect lines," he muttered. "Now they run like rats." Marin smirked. Even rats can bite when cornered. They reached the fuel processor, a massive cylindrical core filled with glowing red plasma and cooling coils. A network of pipes ran in every direction, pulsing with volatile chemicals. "This is it," Cade said, kneeling by the control panel. "Sable?" "Already inside," the AI replied. "I'll trigger the reaction remotely. You'll have 8 minutes to evacuate." Alarms shrieked louder. "Then let's move!" But just as they turned, an Atraxian stepped into view. Not a soldier, a high chancellor, clad in obsidian armor, eyes like polished knives, the one who had overseen Europa. Cade recognized him from the intel vids. "You," Cade whispered. The chancellor raised a pulse blade and hissed. The room dropped into silence, save for the hum of the processor. Cade stepped forward. "This one's mine." The High Chancellor moved like liquid death. His pulse blade whirred to life with a shriek, humming through the dense refinery air. Cade didn't hesitate. He charged. No gun, no tricks, just a short vibro knife gripped tight in one hand and a hurricane of rage in his chest. They collided near the fuel processor's core, sparks flying as metal clashed. Cade ducked under a slice meant to take his head off, drove his blade upward, but the Chancellor caught his wrist and slammed him into a pipe. Pain exploded in Cade's ribs. "You will die nameless," the Chancellor hissed, voice like steel grinding on bone. Cade spat blood. "Then remember the taste." He twisted, broke free, and slashed across the alien's thigh. The armor sparked, split slightly. Not enough. The Chancellor howled and came at him harder. Marin and Rix tried to help, but Cade shouted, "Go! Get to the ship!" Marin hesitated. One look at Cade's face told her everything. This was personal. She grabbed Rix and bolted down the corridor toward the extraction lift, heart pounding. Behind her, the hum of the fuel processor deepened. Sable's countdown echoed through the loudspeakers. 6 minutes. The fight raged. Cade moved with fury, fueled by pain and memory. Every punch, every block, every dodge was for the lives stolen at Europa, for the screams, for the children, for the fact that Earth's leaders had done nothing while monsters like this one feasted on the weak. The Chancellor kicked Cade back again, cracking his shoulder. Cade rolled with it, ignoring the white-hot pain, and came up behind a valve. He wrenched it open, spraying steam into the Atraxian's face. The alien roared and slashed blindly. Cade ducked under and rammed his knife into the exposed joint behind the knee. The Chancellor dropped to one side. Cade didn't wait. He tackled him, slamming him into the processor's support rail. The blade clattered out of the alien's hand. They grappled, teeth bared, fists flying. It was primal. No tactics, no grace, just fury. Finally, Cade pinned the Chancellor's neck under his knee and raised the knife. "This is for Europa," he growled, and drove the blade through the creature's eye. The Chancellor twitched once, then went still. Cade collapsed beside the body, gasping. 4 minutes. Sable's voice rang out again. "Captain, the chain reaction is primed. If you don't leave now—" "I know," Cade muttered, forcing himself up. He limped out of the chamber, clutching his side. Blood soaked his uniform. The corridors blurred around him. Every step was war. He reached the lift just as it was about to rise. Marin grabbed him and hauled him in. "Thought you were gonna die a hero," she snapped, voice tight. "Changed my mind," he said, coughing. "Heroes overrated." They rocketed upward, the refinery rumbling beneath them. The black veil was already in position, hovering above the blast zone. As the lift hatch opened, Sable activated the mag clamp to yank them aboard. The ship pulled away with everything it had, engines screaming, tearing into the upper atmosphere like a bullet. Behind them, Taralis Prime began to crack. The fuel processor went first, erupting in a column of red fire. The chain reaction leapt from tower to tower, setting off storage tanks, melting spires, turning metal into slag. The refinery moon lit up like a dying sun. Cade watched from the viewport, breath shallow. "One more piece," he said softly. "Gone." Sable's avatar appeared beside him. "Empire fleet movements are in disarray, 3 sectors offline. Supply chains crippled. They're trying to understand how one human ship keeps destroying their backbone." Marin stepped forward, arms crossed. "Let them wonder. Fear is more useful than fire." Rix limped into the room, still bandaged, holding a cracked datapad. "Martian resistance just broadcast your speech again. Whole outer colonies are rallying. People are finally waking up." Cade nodded slowly. "Then it's working." He looked out at the field of stars beyond. No applause, no medals, just scars, silence, and the cold hum of a ship that had become more myth than metal. The black veil drifted into the void, one ghost among many, but its legend was spreading like a plague the Empire could no longer contain. They had mocked Earth's prototype warship. Now the Empire bled from wounds it couldn't see. And Cade, he wasn't done cutting.